Have you ever looked up at a bright blue sky and wondered if the air you are breathing is actually trying to kill you? Right now, millions of people are walking around under a hazy orange sun, completely unaware that the invisible dust in their lungs is rewriting their health risks for the next decade. Before we uncover the terrifying truth behind this silent crisis, do me a quick favor. If you value clear, honest reporting over sensational clickbait, hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and share it with someone who needs to see this. Your support keeps this channel alive and independent. Let us talk about what is actually happening on the ground right now. When you turn on the news, you might hear politicians and officials using very careful, measured language. They will tell you that the current wildfire season in Canada is technically running below the 5-year average for total area burned. They will point to spreadsheets and satellite data to prove that, mathematically speaking, this year is not as bad as the record-breaking seasons of the past. But numbers on a screen do not tell the whole story. They do not capture the smell of ash in your backyard. They do not show you the orange haze blotting out the sun over major cities, and they certainly do not reflect the sheer panic of a community given only minutes to flee their homes. The reality on the ground is a stark contradiction to the paperwork. As of mid-July, there are over 800 active wildfires burning across the Canadian landscape. More than 700 of those fires are completely out of control. The national preparedness level has been pushed to its absolute maximum. Fire agencies are stretched to their breaking point, pulling resources from every available corner of the country just to keep the most critical threats at bay. Since the beginning of the year, over 31,000 individual fires have sparked across the nation. Together, they have consumed nearly 2 million hectares of land. Just a few days prior, the burned area was significantly smaller. In less than a single week, hundreds of thousands of hectares vanished into smoke and ash. That is the speed at which this crisis is accelerating. The reason officials focus on the total area burned rather than the number of fires is a matter of scientific measurement. A season with thousands of small, quickly contained fires will look much worse on a fire count chart than a season with fewer, massive, unstoppable blazes. This year, we are seeing a high number of ignitions, but until mid-July, many of them were kept relatively small. However, the moment the weather shifted in the second week of July, everything changed. Explosive fire growth took over. The small fires became massive threats. The controlled burns became runaway disasters. The illusion of a quiet year shattered overnight. If a season that is officially classified as below average can still produce skies so thick with smoke that 100 million people in the United States are forced to stay indoors, we have to ask ourselves a terrifying question. What happens when the season actually reaches the average? What happens when it exceeds it? The ceiling for how bad this disaster can get has not even been tested yet. We are only just beginning to understand the true limits of this crisis. To truly grasp the scale of this event, you have to understand the journey of the smoke itself. It is not just a local problem, it is a continental event. When a massive forest fire burns in the remote, roadless expanses of northwestern Ontario, the immediate destruction is confined to the trees and the wildlife in that specific area. But the smoke does not respect borders. It does not care about city limits, state lines, or international boundaries. Once the intense heat of the fire pushes the smoke high enough into the atmosphere, it catches the upper-level wind currents. These atmospheric rivers can carry fine particulate matter across entire countries in a matter of days. This is exactly how a fire burning in a nearly uninhabited stretch of Canadian forest ends up dictating the daily lives of people living in Chicago, Boston, and New York City. People who will never see a single flame from the actual fire find themselves checking air quality apps before letting their kids play outside. They are closing their windows, running air purifiers, and canceling outdoor events. The smoke event in mid-July pushed Toronto into having some of the worst air quality of any major city on the planet. It was worse than cities that deal with chronic, year-round industrial pollution. The Air Quality Health Index hit the highest risk category, a designation reserved for conditions where the smoke poses a severe danger to every single person exposed, regardless of their age or baseline health. This cross-border smoke invasion is no longer a rare anomaly. It is a well-established, repeating pattern. Every recent fire season, the plumes drift south, and sometimes they even cross the Atlantic Ocean to reach Europe. The atmosphere is simply moving the pollution from the source to the population centers. It is a brutal reminder that we are all connected by the air we share. The actions taken, or not taken, in a remote forest directly impact the health of a child breathing air in a concrete jungle hundreds of miles away. We are diving deep into the science, the human stories, and the hidden realities of this escalating disaster. If you are finding this detailed breakdown valuable and want to see more content that cuts through the noise, take a second to share this video with a friend or a family member. Sharing this helps us bypass the algorithm and get the truth directly to the people who need it most. While the smoke over the cities grabs the headlines and causes widespread inconvenience, there is a much darker, quieter tragedy unfolding in the remote north. This is the part of the story that rarely gets the attention it deserves. In mid-July, a fast-moving wildfire completely overwhelmed the Namagusi-Sagan First Nation, also known as Collins First Nation. This is a remote community located about 125 miles north of Thunder Bay. It has no road access. When the fire hit, it moved with a terrifying speed. Within less than an hour, the flames largely destroyed the community. Imagine the sheer terror of that moment. Residents reported having only minutes to grab whatever belongings they could carry before the fire overtook their homes. Because there are no roads, the entire community had to escape by boat. They fled into the water while their homes burned behind them. Community leaders later revealed a devastating detail. The residents received no advanced warning from provincial or federal officials. There was no evacuation support in the exact moment it mattered most. They were entirely on their own. Fortunately, every single community member was eventually accounted for. But the destruction of their homes and the trauma of that sudden, unsupported escape leaves a scar that will last a lifetime. This single event is not an isolated incident. It is a glaring symptom of a massive systemic failure. Across the country, dozens of First Nations communities have been battered by wildfires this season. Thousands of residents have been evacuated, and over 1,000 remain displaced at any given time. The statistics here are shocking and deeply unfair. First Nations communities account for roughly 42% of all wildfire-related evacuations in Canada. Yet they make up only about 5% of the total national population. This staggering disproportion is not a random accident of nature. It is the direct result of geography, chronic underinvestment, and a long, painful history of placing Indigenous communities in areas with limited infrastructure. These communities often lack paved road access, which makes evacuation a logistical nightmare. They lack local firefighting resources, meaning they have to wait for help to arrive from hundreds of miles away. They lack advanced early warning systems, leaving them blind until the fire is already at their doorstep. The lack of road access also means that when a fire does hit, the supply lines for firefighting are incredibly weak. Water has to be flown in by helicopter. Fuel for the pumps has to be airdropped. Food and supplies for the evacuees have to be coordinated through complex logistics chains that can easily break down under pressure. This is the reality of fighting fires in the remote north, and it is a reality that puts these communities at a severe structural disadvantage. When we talk about the impact of wildfires, we have to recognize the massive inequality in how this disaster is experienced. The vast majority of people affected by the smoke in Toronto, Chicago, or New York will never see a flame. They will not lose their homes. Their experience is limited to a hazy sky, a weird smell in the air, and a notification on their phone telling them to stay inside for a day. It is an inconvenience. For the people in remote Indigenous communities, the experience is a fight for survival. It is an urgent evacuation by boat or small aircraft. It is the agonizing wait to find out if your home still exists. It is a complete loss of control over your own life. Both groups are living through the exact same wildfire season, but their realities could not be more different. And the government has started to acknowledge this vulnerability. Recent federal funding includes dedicated projects with Indigenous governments aimed at improving risk mapping and emergency planning. There are new initiatives to train Indigenous wildland firefighters, building local capacity. So communities do not have to rely entirely on outside crews who may not understand the specific terrain. But whether this new investment can actually keep pace with the sheer speed and destruction of fires like the one that hit Namagusi-Sagan is a question that this very season is testing in real time. To understand why so many fires are burning out of control, you need to understand the brutal reality of wildfire triage. When the news reports that a fire is out of control, it sounds like the firefighters have given up. It sounds like the situation is being ignored, but that is not what that designation means. In the world of wildland firefighting, an out-of-control fire simply means the fire is burning in terrain that is too dangerous or too difficult to access. It means there are no roads, no easy water sources, and no safe places to land helicopters or drop heavy equipment. Fire agencies are forced to make impossible choices. They have a limited number of crews, a limited number of aircraft, and a limited budget. When hundreds of fires spark at the same time, across a massive roadless wilderness, they cannot fight them all. They have to triage. Crews are deployed to defend the fires that directly threaten towns, cities, critical infrastructure, and human lives. These are the priority targets. Meanwhile, fires burning deep in the remote backcountry are often just monitored. They are watched from the air, but no one is sent in to fight them because it is simply not safe or practical to do so. In these cases, the fire will only stop when the weather changes. It will only stop when the rain comes, or the temperature drops, or the humidity rises. Until then, it burns. Imagine the physical and mental toll on the firefighters themselves. These are men and women working 18-hour shifts in grueling heat, wearing heavy protective gear, breathing in ash, and sleeping on the bare ground. They are fighting an enemy that regenerates overnight. A fire they thought they had contained suddenly jumps a fire line, fueled by a sudden shift in the wind, and starts burning toward a new town. The psychological weight of that constant uncertainty is immense. They are making split-second decisions that determine whether a forest is saved or a neighborhood is lost. And they are doing it with resources that are constantly stretched thinner and thinner as the season drags on. The aircraft used to drop water and retardant are being flown at maximum capacity. The pilots are navigating treacherous, smoke-filled canyons, relying on instruments and sheer skill to deliver their payloads accurately. When a plane runs out of retardant, it has to fly all the way back to a base to reload, leaving the fire on the ground unattended during that transit time. These logistical bottlenecks mean that even with the best intentions and the bravest crews, there are simply not enough hours in the day to cover every single threat. This triage system is a harsh reality of managing a continent-sized landscape. It is not a failure of effort. It is a mathematical limitation of resources. But it does mean that the total number of active fires can remain incredibly high, even when the most aggressive firefighting tactics are being used. The fires in the deep woods are just waiting for the weather to turn. And as we look at the forecasts for the rest of the summer, the weather is not expected to turn in our favor anytime soon. We are unpacking the complex logistics, the hidden dangers, and the future forecasts that will define the rest of this wildfire season. If you appreciate this level of deep, nuanced analysis and want to help us keep producing high-quality, fact-based content, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It is the single best way to ensure you never miss an update as this story continues to unfold. Let us shift our focus to the invisible danger hanging in the air. The smoke from these wildfires is not just a visual nuisance, it is a complex chemical mixture, and the most dangerous component is something you cannot see, smell, or easily avoid. It is called fine particulate matter, or PM2.5. These are microscopic particles, roughly 2.5 micrometers across. To put that in perspective, that is about 1/30th the width of a single human hair. Because they are so incredibly small, these particles bypass the body's natural defense systems. When you breathe in larger dust or debris, your nose and throat filter it out. You cough it up, you sneeze it out. But PM2.5 slips straight past those defenses. It travels deep into the smallest airways of your lungs, and from there, it crosses directly into your bloodstream. To understand why PM2.5 is so dangerous, you have to compare it to larger particles. Larger dust, known as PM10, gets caught in your upper respiratory tract. Your body can handle it. But PM2.5 is so small it behaves almost like a gas. It crosses the alveolar barrier in the lungs and enters the circulatory system. Once in the blood, it doesn't just stay in the lungs, it travels to the heart, the brain, and other vital organs, causing systemic inflammation. This is why a barely visible haze outside your window is not just a visual inconvenience. It is a profound physiological event. Short-term exposure to this fine particulate matter can trigger severe asthma attacks, acute bronchitis, and intense eye and throat irritation. It significantly raises the risk of respiratory infections. For people who already have heart or lung conditions, this smoke can push a strained physical system past a dangerous breaking point. Health researchers have consistently documented massive spikes in emergency room visits and hospital admissions in the days immediately following a major smoke event. Some studies even suggest that wildfire smoke is more harmful, particle for particle, than the everyday pollution we get from cars and factories. The specific chemistry of burning wood and vegetation generates more free radicals once inhaled, driving greater inflammation and oxidative stress in the lung tissue. There is also a dangerous myth that needs to be busted right now. Many people assume that if they cannot smell smoke, the air is safe. They think that once the strong campfire smell fades, the danger has passed. This is completely false. The smallest, most damaging particles do not always have a strong odor. A day that looks like nothing more than a pale, ordinary haze can still be carrying enough PM2.5 to send vulnerable people to the hospital. You cannot trust your nose. You have to check the actual air quality index data. To make matters even more complicated, this smoke often arrives at the exact same time as a severe heat wave. This creates a terrifying paradox for public health. During a normal heat wave, the standard medical advice is to open your windows at night to let the hot air out. But during a smoke event, the advice is the exact opposite. You are told to seal your house. Keep all windows and doors tightly closed and run your air conditioning on a recirculating setting. When a heat warning and a wildfire smoke warning hit the same region at the same time, vulnerable populations are given two pieces of advice that directly contradict each other. An elderly person living in an apartment without reliable air conditioning is trapped. If they open the window to cool down, they breathe in toxic smoke. If they keep the window closed to block the smoke, they risk severe heat exhaustion or heat stroke. It is a literal no-win situation. Health officials are forced to advise people to prioritize the most immediate threat, which usually means keeping the windows closed and seeking out designated cooling centers. But for those who cannot easily travel to a cooling center, the risk remains incredibly high. Whenever a wildfire season reaches this level of intensity, the internet fills up with alternative theories. Every major fire season brings a wave of claims suggesting the fires were set deliberately. Some people talk about coordinated arson campaigns. Others go even further, suggesting the use of directed energy weapons or secret government plots. It is important to address these claims directly and honestly because they distract from the real issues. The honest truth separates a tiny grain of reality from a massive mountain of fiction. Yes, individual fires do sometimes have human causes. Arson is a real, documented phenomenon in specific, isolated cases, but a continent-scale wildfire season involving hundreds of simultaneous ignitions spread across thousands of kilometers of largely roadless northern forest is simply not something a person with a lighter could realistically produce. The logistics are impossible. The genuine drivers of this crisis are entirely natural, though they are being accelerated by our changing climate. The primary causes are lightning strikes hitting extremely dry fuel. We have years of persistent drought drying out the forests, creating a massive buildup of dead wood and dry brush. When a lightning bolt hits that dry fuel, combined with strong shifting winds, the fire catches and spreads with explosive speed. It is the ordinary, well-understood physics of hot, parched terrain meeting an ignition source. There is absolutely no credible evidence of any exotic or deliberate ignition mechanism behind this season, and frankly, none is needed. The sustained heat and extreme dryness we are already experiencing are fully capable of producing these catastrophic results on their own. The gap between what people see on the news and the actual physical scale of a boreal forest fire season creates fertile ground for conspiracy theories. Very few of us ever witness lightning igniting dry brush firsthand. We do not have a clear sense of just how quickly bone-dry vegetation can catch and spread under the right conditions. So we look for complex explanations for a problem that is actually very simple and very natural. So where does this leave us as we look toward the rest of the summer? Canada is currently managing a wildfire season that is technically below average by the main scientific measurement. Yet, that same below-average season has already produced smoke that ranked a major Canadian city among the worst in the world. It has pushed toxic haze across an international border to affect roughly 100 million Americans. It has destroyed entire Indigenous communities with almost no warning. Government forecasters are explicitly warning that hotter, drier conditions are expected to continue through August across nearly all of Canada. Long-standing precipitation deficits persist, especially across Western Canada. Modeling from federal fire scientists shows British Columbia facing the highest and most sustained fire risk of any region heading into the interior. The danger there is flagged as higher than normal as the summer progresses. Nobody claims the season is guaranteed to reach the extraordinary levels of the record-breaking years of the past. By the numbers, it has not matched them yet. But what the numbers do show clearly is that the underlying ingredients are firmly in place. Sustained heat, widespread dryness, and hundreds of active ignition points. The season still has a stretch ahead of it. 3 consecutive severe fire years in a row is exactly the pattern that makes forecasters treat this with real caution. The concern is not that this year has already matched the past. The concern is how quickly a season can flip. Beyond the immediate threat, we also have to consider the long-term ecological damage. When a forest burns this hot and this completely, the soil itself can be sterilized. The seeds are destroyed. The root systems are baked. This means that the forest may not grow back the way it did before. We could see vast areas of land transitioning from dense boreal forest to shrubland or grassland. This will only alter the local climate and wildlife populations even further. This is a permanent reshaping of the landscape. And for the people living through this, the psychological toll is just as heavy. The constant anxiety of checking air quality apps, the fear of sudden evacuation orders, and the grief of watching familiar landscapes turn to ash. This is the hidden cost of the climate crisis, paid out in daily stress and quiet trauma. If you want to understand whether this season is stabilizing or accelerating, keep a close eye on a few specific indicators. Watch the number of out-of-control fires that require a full response. That number reflects fires serious enough to demand crews. Watch how long the smoke episodes linger over major cities and how far they travel. Both the duration and the reach of these events have been extending in recent years. And watch the temperature and drought forecasts specifically for British Columbia and Western Canada. The situation across Canada is still actively developing. The next several weeks will determine the outcome. We are standing at the edge of a new normal where the air we breathe is no longer a given. Stay informed, stay safe, and keep looking out for one another. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.